Welcome back to Tech, Tesla, and Trends. Again, we're following up on part 3 here with the look at superpower and what that is and how that ties into the overall plans of Tesla Energy and standing the grid on its head and why all of this matters. So I give complete props to Tony Seba and Adam Dorr in for their work. They've got a beautiful report that they've published on the energy sector, and it's available. I'll link it in the notes. But again, you can Google Tony Seba on this one and find the energy disruption that's occurring there. Another piece of credit that really belongs here is for Dr. Jemma Green from Power Ledger, co-founder there. She's written some fabulous articles over the years, and Forbes and a couple other places, and you can find her on Twitter. Truly one of the visionaries out there discussing it, how the grid's changing and where things are going. And then the other individual that I think deserves some credit here is Sasan Mahktari. Probably slaughtered his name, and apologize for that. But he's the founder and CEO of Open Access Tech International, and some of the one of the earliest, I think, may have been the original application service provider in the energy sector. That was back in the late 90s. I think it was 96. I heard about that one. Anyways, that's the innovation that's occurring here is all part and parcel of the changes, the innovation and disruption that's occurring within the electric utility grid. It's one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating is how all of these concepts and ideas interact with each other. And some of these folks may or may not know of each other. I would assume they do, because there's some obvious natural connection points between their ideas. So in looking at Sasan Mahktari's concepts there, some of the things he's brought forward and discussed is the idea that that 60 to 70% of all transactions will occur at the distribution level, and an understanding that there needs to be software in place to facilitate that service exchange between your house and your neighbor's house. And that one of the things that in an article I read that he had written was discussing the 4 levels of the grid. Grid 1.0 is all of the original legacy before the innovations that were occurring with distribution energy resources occurring. Where you have a battery at your house or some other location that is storing energy on the grid, distributing the overall generation capacity or ability to distribute energy. Hence the name distributed energy resource. The electric utility world is very much acronyms describe what something does. You look at a transformer, what does it do? It transforms voltage from one level to another, either up or down, but that's what it does. It transforms. Distributed energy resource, which means there are resources that are in multiple locations, and that's what they do. They distribute energy. Yeah, it's a resource. Simple, but pretty much in the electrical world, the words you hear, take them literally. Moving forward, looking at the Grid 2.0, which is kind of now. it's you've got distributed resources that are going to be less than 50% of the system, probably starting from where it was 1% up to 50% in my mind. Some may argue on that percentage level, and that's that's a healthy debate opportunity, in my opinion. Grid 3.0 is anything above 50% of distributed resources. So as you get to that level, it's totally changing the makeup and how things are interacting. Grid 2.0 is, you're going to have a lot of people arguing over the value of distributed resources. Some are going to be totally opposed to it because it just doesn't make sense. You can't maintain inertia. You can't maintain it's intermittent, and the resiliency of the grid, and all of the excuses for why it doesn't make sense because the old ways are changing. And that's, those sentiments are legitimate in that those people expressing them have a responsibility for maintaining the grid, and they've been trained to maintain the grid. And those skills and resources and materials and equipment that they are utilizing, they have they know how that all interacts and plays together. And as this disruptive technology comes online and research, and it changes and creates a new product, and yes, that's a wonderful thing. And these great miracle products and batteries and solar PV that can even pull energy from the lights that you're using. That's craziness in and of itself. But there is a level of functional use that has to be maintained. That resiliency of the grid to operate and provide you power when you flick that switch. When you turn your laptop on and it's plugged in and you had no battery, these are the things that matter. And so we're looking at this from a perspective of those arguing against some of the modernization of the grid might have some reasons and logic involved. It's not that they hate green energy, or that they have some particular agenda that is all about coal resources, or burning coal, or destroying the earth. Sometimes it's a lot less complex than the conspiracies and folks want to make it. It's simply about maintaining consistency, and change is hard. That's a reality in everybody's life. Change is hard. So Grid 3.0, with that greater than 50% distributed energy resource, truly provides the necessity for interconnection between these nodes of the grid. And they have to have this back and forth flow to maintain that resiliency of the grid, the ability for it to operate without causing either too much flow one direction, that bi-directional flow of you collecting energy and feeding it to your neighbor, or to the next subdivision down the street, or to the subdivision on the other side of the power grid, or potentially someday in the future a home on the other side of the world. Without the integrated software component of this, and much of that is where Tesla is really innovating in a major, huge way. It's going to be very difficult for these distributed resources to connect and interact together. So it's that bi-directional nature requires that software interaction, and the overall power hub and microgrid controllers components that Tesla's developed. They have a really critical component to that, to the maintenance of our grid, and that transaction that's going to occur. Looking forward, though, that Grid 3.0 is really projected to take shape and to materialize sometime between 2026 and 2029 range. Some estimates I've read put it at 2027. I think that's where Sasan Mahktari's at. I don't know. There's a lot of expense involved in this particular innovation and upgrading of the grid and bringing components online. So without an innovator like Tesla, and that they're continuing to decrease the overall operating cost of your utility, that it would likely take longer. Potentially, where Tesla's at with their battery production and rollout, it could be feasible for that 2027 range, 2029. That's a potential process there, and hopefully that is the case. I mean, that would be amazing from a perspective of what it means for us as consumers. It will also cause our cooperatives. I think that cooperative model will have to be revisited, not just for the value that it brings to those working together, but I think many of the larger city corporation type models will become largely ineffective and will probably need to take on more of that cooperative model to interact and become more effective in that. Perhaps that particular model may entirely be superseded by some form of AI integration. I think that's where one of Jemma Green's points of view, and it's entirely a possibility. That whole AI determining what the needs of its particular site are, and then having a conversation with another particular site, and then bringing that together. And ultimately, through a blockchain contract of some sort, enabling an actual dollar exchange to occur. Looking at all of that, though, the 2030 horizon window that Tony Seba tosses out for when superpower should be available, as you look at the growth and the changes between the Grid 2.0 and 3.0, Grid 4.0 is what I believe would be that superpower position. So beginning in 2030-ish is when that superpower option truly does become an option. It's consistent with the growth and changes that are occurring within the industry, and it has the potential for making massive changes to not only the co-ops or corporations that are producing that power, but to change the regions where that superpower exists. One of the things that really matters in that equation is that superpower is essentially free. There's minimal cost involved, so it enables manufacturers and other more ambitious projects, such as desalination plants for water and other crazy ideas. Who knows what's going to come out of this? That will be enabled because there's the ability to generate so much, and by capturing solar energy and having the capacity of hundreds upon hundreds of gigawatts, probably more like thousands upon thousands of gigawatts of battery capacity that's available to the world to store that energy and utilize as needed. That changes the equation about what electrical power is, and the equation of economics in that whole conversation. I'm convinced that when that occurs, we're going to see some next level disruption occurring in our economies as well. Some of those that are dedicated to that particular maintenance are going to be struggling. Hopefully, they've been able to retire and their retirements are secure, and that we're not stranding too many power plant resource projects that are out there. I sure as heck would not be building any brand new coal power plants going forward. I question the fiscal accuracy of that projection. Oftentimes, when you look at how those power plants are those loans are acquired, they're based upon a quasi-linear growth of costs and other factors, and the reality of what's occurring right now is an exponential growth in power researched, especially in batteries and in the solar PV capacity and ability to transition or to capture and to convert the solar wave, light as it's captured. Yeah, boy, I'm having one of those moments where I need to be enlightened. Shocking, I know. No video's complete without a good bad dad joke. Looking at overall where we go with this, the superpower and that clean energy that's stored in batteries, and having the ability to then share that amongst those that are needing it, changes how the world will operate. It has impacts upon our social, it has impacts upon our governmental requirements, upon the whole manufacturing and how things are done, and that barely touches some of the energy arbitrage that's going to be occurring in that whole process over the next few decades. Things that are occurring is going to truly change what we see. I believe every home will have a solar rooftop and battery built in by default, and the same thing will occur with every commercial building that is built as well, because it makes sense. If you have battery on site, you have the ability to generate revenues over time as your AI that's in charge of that particular exchange between local resources takes its small little micro transaction cut at the blockchain. So for now, we'll leave that where it's at. The world is changing. There are exponential changes and phase change events occurring, as Tony Seba is fond of saying. We need to prepare as a people to be able to interact with the world that's occurring, and that most especially means we need to think differently at times about the problems we are facing, and recognize that change is occurring and that it is going to impact our life and the lives of our children and our grandchildren, and be prepared to accept how that shakes out, and be prepared, more importantly, to participate in that change and having a conversation and arguing for what matters and what's important. So, have a good night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.